You usually seem quite capable. How could you do a bunch of stupid things this time? This woman is He Jing, a cowardly corporate slave who has had a weak personality since childhood. She is used to acting according to others' expressions. Even after growing up and entering the workplace, she didn't get rid of this bad habit. Facing her boss's wandering hands, she dared to be angry but didn't dare to speak up. She never dared to refuse the work assigned by her boss. To complete the tasks, she had to work overtime every day. Gradually, her colleagues all knew that He Jing was easy to bully. They always handed her unfinished projects, making her clean up their messes. Although He Jing was extremely reluctant, she didn't know how to refuse. Coupled with her weak personality, she still took over the hot potatoes pushed into her hands by her colleagues. But a person's energy is ultimately limited. For this project, He Jing still did her best. However, the project still failed. The boss didn't ask for the reason and cursed at her. You usually seem quite capable. How could you do a bunch of stupid things this time? Tell me what should be done. You have to take full responsibility for this. Go back, type up your resignation letter, and bring it to me. He Jing became a scapegoat and was forced to resign. On the day of her resignation, He Jing drank a lot of alcohol and cried her eyes out. She cursed her own cowardice. In her sleep, she secretly swore that she would never act according to others' expressions again and never live so frustratingly again. However, He Jing never expected that just one drunken night would change her life. Luo Fei raised her hand and slapped the head made across the face. In the morning, He Jing woke up from her drunken state and found that her soul had transmigrated. She transmigrated into a duchess named Luo Fei. He Jing originally thought she could turn her life around and sing triumphantly, but she didn't expect that this Luo Fei was also an unloved and neglected character. Moreover, her personality was even more cowardly. Even the maids in the house looked down on her and even bullied her. This greatly frustrated He Jing, who had originally intended to change herself and start over. Today is the 8th day since He Jing transmigrated. She sat blankly on the bed, and the Duchess's past surfaced in her mind. The etiquette teacher's roaring instructions in class, the mockery and contempt of the nobles and social circles, and the pranks of the maids, making the Duchess wear dirty dresses to events, telling her the wrong time, causing her to wait bitterly for the Duke. What's worse, defying the Duchess's orders and deliberately teasing her. Facing this unbearable past, He Jing let out a long sigh. With clenched fists, she told herself, I am no longer He Jing, but Duchess Luo Fei. But I will absolutely no longer be that weak-willed Luo Fei who lets others bully her. So Luo Fei got up, washed up, and dressed. At this moment, the maids pushed the door open and entered. Madam, I'm really sorry. I had something to do, so I came late. Hearing this, Luo Fei was very angry. Looking at this disgusting, petty face, she thought to herself, coming late is just an excuse. You're just bullying the Duchess. You knew that even if she was freezing, she wouldn't dress herself and would only wait foolishly. You just figured this out and came late on purpose, right? Luo Fei stood up and said, yes, I'm all dressed, but that doesn't mean you can slack off on your duties. From tomorrow on, everyone must come to serve me on time. Otherwise, I will not let you off lightly. Facing Luo Fei's warning, the maids were not only unafraid, but also started snickering one by one. The head maid taking the lead was even more arrogant. She took a step forward. Today's Duchess is really a bit different. Are you ordering us? Luo Fei looked at the head maid's mocking smile, recalling the oath she had sworn never to live a cowardly life again. Thinking of this, Luo Fei spoke. Colin, come a little closer. Luo Fei raised her hand and slapped the head maid across the face. This really frightened the spectating maids. The head maid couldn't believe it even more. Was this still that cowardly Duchess? How I do things is my business. You have no right to interfere, and you can't. If any of you dare to be late again in the future, it won't be as simple as a slap. You may leave. The head maid had a face full of shock and indignation, but she was still dragged out by the other maids. Luo Fei took a deep breath. Her fists trembled slightly. It turned out that the feeling of standing up for oneself was so satisfying. Seeing the shocked and frightened looks of these wicked servants was truly a relief. Feeling relaxed, Luo Fei looked at the beautiful weather outside and decided to go for a walk. On the way, she recalled all her experiences in her previous world. There was nothing worth her lingering attachment. If I really can't go back, then I will absolutely not be that cowardly here. At the very least, I must be a duchess who is no longer bullied. At night, Luo Fei dined with the Duke. Although they were husband and wife, the atmosphere was as stiff as two strangers. Luo Fei was eating and peeking at the Duke. She mustered up her courage and said, Your Grace, I want something. The Duke, holding his wine glass, froze for a moment. This was the first time the Madam dared to open her mouth and make a request to him. The Duke was a bit puzzled. What does Madam want? Luo Fei spoke nervously. I want some tea leaves. Before transmigrating, He Jing loved drinking tea. Savoring a cup of fragrant tea could always relax her mind and body. But after coming to this world, everyone likes to drink coffee. She couldn't find the existence of tea leaves in the entire ducal mansion. Seeing the Duke frozen there without responding for a long time, Luo Fei hurriedly explained, Tea is not a precious thing. With your financial resources, it shouldn't be. Before she could finish, the Duke's voice became fierce. I will order someone to buy you a sufficient amount of tea leaves. Also, you don't need to tell me about such trivial matters in the future. Buy whatever you want. Only then did Luo Fei realize that her words just now must have hurt this man's pride. The next morning, hearing that the tea leaves had been delivered, Luo Fei was very happy. She hurriedly ran outside, but when she saw that the courtyard was full of large boxes, her mind was full of question marks. Were the promised tea leaves? Looking at the courtyard full of large boxes, Luo Fei had a face full of doubt. She hurriedly added, I mean tea, the one I mentioned to the Duke. The tea leaves that can only be brewed in hot water to drink. That's right, madam. These are all the tea leaves the master ordered. Hearing this, Luo Fei's forehead was covered in black lines. This Alphonsus, his pride is really unusually strong. Fine. Regardless, she still had to thank him. Luo Fei took a tea canister, preparing to have afternoon tea. She happened to see the little maid Ellie, the only maid in the ducal mansion who treated her well. Luo Fei hurriedly invited her to have afternoon tea together. The little maid said she still had a lot of work unfinished. Luo Fei looked at the sweating little maid and thought to herself, I have to let the little maid rest a bit. So she said, It's fine, I am the mistress here. Just go tell Madam Miller that I called you over. Then she pulled Ellie to the kitchen, carefully prepared a bit, brewed a cup of black tea, and handed it to Ellie. Ellie took a gentle sip, then said with a face full of happiness, Is this really tea? It's too delicious. The aroma and taste are both sweet. The maids nearby smelled this tangy fragrance and also drooled one by one. Luo Fei pulled Ellie, found a comfortable spot, and sat down. Drinking tea and chatting, they were extremely comfortable. At this moment, Madam Miller walked in and said to Luo Fei arrogantly, I hope you won't run around with maids who haven't finished their work in the future. This will delay her duties. I have already punished her for this incident. I was the one who took Ellie away. On what grounds did you punish her? Managing the maids is my responsibility. Madam has no right to interfere. Luo Fei looked at the extremely arrogant Madam Miller, thinking, Do you really think I'm still that sick cat? If I don't teach you a lesson today, you won't know who's boss. Luo Fei, step by step, walked towards the arrogant Madam Miller and questioned, What, as the dignified Duchess, can I not even manage a maid? Madam Miller, in this mansion, am I the master? Or are you the master? Could it be that you are challenging the authority of the Duke of Belbrook's family? If in the future you dare to commit insubordination or defy my orders again, I will make you pay for it. Do you understand? Madam Miller, under Luo Fei's barrage of questions, broke out in a cold sweat and fled in panic. After this reprimand, from then on, no one dared to bully the little maid again. At noon the next day, Ellie was washing clothes in the courtyard, sweating profusely from exhaustion. Luo Fei came over, grabbed Ellie's hand, and without explanation, took her to drink tea. Just as Luo Fei was about to open the tea leaves, 3 knights burst into the living room. They were returning to the knight's order and passed through here to take a shortcut. Seeing their faces covered in sweat, Luo Fei invited them to have some tea before leaving. Just as 2 of them were still hesitating, the overly familiar blonde knight immediately agreed, This is truly an honor. With that, he pulled the other 2 to sit down. Before long, Luo Fei brought out iced fruit tea. This terrified the little maid and the knights. How could they let the Duchess do such a thing? The knights looked at the iced fruit tea with faces full of doubt. Shouldn't tea be hot? Luo Fei explained, Tea can of course be drunk hot, but it can also be drunk cold. The knights and the little maid drank the iced tea in their hands with doubts. It was truly so delicious and especially thirst-quenching. They scrambled to ask for another cup. The 3 knights returned to the knight's order and excitedly showed off to their comrades how delicious the Duchess's tea was. This made a group of knights extremely envious. At this time, a red-haired knight raised a question. I've seen the Duchess. She clearly doesn't even dare to make eye contact with people, and looks like she can't do anything. How could she suddenly make such strange tea? Facing the red-haired knight's questioning, the blonde knight and the gray-haired knight got upset. How can you slander our goddess? Saying so, they were about to draw their swords for a duel. At this moment, the knight commander walked over. After finding out the reason, he flew into a rage. Not only did you meet with Madam without authorization, you also drank the tea she brewed herself. You three are grounded for a week to reflect on your actions. Afterwards, the commander hurriedly went to find the Duke to apologize for his subordinates offending Madam. However, the Duke was not interested in Madam's private affairs at all, and even said that there was no need to report such trivial matters regarding Madam in the future. Hearing this, the commander silently withdrew. However, when he reached the door, he couldn't help but say, the knights actually drank the tea brewed by Madam. They all said that the tea Madam brewed was very delicious and extremely unique. The Duke didn't speak. I already told you not to mention Madam's private affairs to me again. Why are you still bringing it up? Meanwhile, at the ducal mansion, Luo Fei was organizing her tea leaves. The passing butler also came to help. The tea leaves were quickly organized. To express her gratitude, Luo Fei decided to invite the butler to drink tea. Just as Luo Fei and the butler walked into the living room, talking and laughing, they found the Duke actually sitting on the sofa. From their marriage until now, Luo Fei and the Duke had had several such encounters, but they had never communicated. The Duke would always leave before Luo Fei could speak. Luo Fei thought it would probably be the same this time. At this moment, the Duke walked over and said, I want to drink tea. Luo Fei looked up at the Duke, a face full of surprise. The Duke added, Madam, could you brew a cup of delicious tea for me too? Luo Fei hesitated for a long time and stammered, I already agreed to drink tea with the butler. Hearing this, the butler thought, this won't do. He hurriedly used the excuse of having an urgent matter to deal with and trotted away. Only this estranged couple was left in the room. The two of them almost never communicated normally. Luo Fei was incredibly awkward, shaking her head. What should she do? The Duke noticed that his wife had been acting a bit abnormal recently. That woman who originally didn't dare to look at him or speak to him actually dared to make requests now, and even invited the knights to drink the tea she brewed. The Duke sought out his wife with doubts. He also wanted to taste the unique tea the knights talked about. The Duke looked at what Luo Fei brought over. It looked just average. The Duke took a gentle sip. Beside him, Luo Fei was so nervous that her palms were sweating. Her mood at this moment was like a contestant in a talent show, waiting for the judges to score her performance. After drinking the tea, the Duke said, I'm leaving. Luo Fei was a bit disappointed. There wasn't even a single word of evaluation. At this moment, the Duke suddenly turned around and said to Luo Fei, Can I still drink the tea you brew? Luo Fei was stunned at first, then happily replied, Of course. You are welcome to taste it any time, Your Grace. The next day, the Duke came to Luo Fei for tea again. Luo Fei carefully prepared several kinds of tea leaves for the Duke to choose from. The Duke smelled them one by one and picked one. Looking at the tea leaves in the Duke's hand, Luo Fei explained, These tea leaves are smoked, so the taste will be similar to tobacco. It seems Your Grace really likes cigarettes. As they chatted, Luo Fei laughed heartily. The Duke looked at Luo Fei without speaking. After a few seconds, he slowly said, Madam, you'd better not laugh with your mouth wide open. It's too unladylike. The atmosphere instantly froze. Luo Fei smiled awkwardly, grabbed the tea leaves angrily, and turned to leave. A few minutes later, Luo Fei brought over the fragrant tea. The Duke really liked this tea. The tea had a special smoky flavor. The husband and wife sat together like this, slowly savoring the tea. At this time, the Duke experienced the taste of coziness for the first time. This was a feeling he, as a workaholic, had never experienced before. Before this, the Duke was very afraid of being idle, because once he was idle, he would feel endless emptiness. So now he somewhat liked afternoon tea. Little did he know, what he liked might not just be the afternoon tea. Listen to me well. The Duke's change in attitude towards Madam is only temporary. It won't be long before the two return to their original relationship. Also, it's impossible for Madam to change. Whoever says such stupid things, I will absolutely not spare them. This woman loudly reprimanding the servants is named Colin, the head maid of the ducal mansion. When she heard the servants discussing that the Duchess had become smart and her relationship with the Duke had also grown closer, It was very hard for her to accept. After reprimanding the servants, Colin left angrily and muttered to herself, Luo Fei has become different? What a joke. That woman will never change. Even if she became the Duchess, she will still be trampled under my feet. Why did Colin hate Luo Fei so much? When Colin was little, she moved from out of town to the capital. Because she moved from out of town, Colin became a target of bullying. This made Colin very desperate until Luo Fei appeared. Luo Fei was born timid and cowardly. She quickly became the new target of bullying for the children. Colin also joined the ranks of bullying Luo Fei. This allowed Colin to slowly integrate into the circle of noble children in the capital. From then on, Colin formed a twisted idea. If she wanted to avoid being bullied, she had to trample Luo Fei under her feet. Up until now, Luo Fei became the Duchess, and Colin, due to her family's decline, became a servant. But this idea had never changed. Now that Luo Fei is changing little by little, how could Colin let it go? How is this an aloof Duchess? She's clearly an approachable angel. 3 knights stood by the window, greeting the Duchess. Seeing the 3 knights, Luo Fei ran over exceptionally happily. Seeing that the knights had just finished training and were sweating profusely, Luo Fei invited them in for a cup of herbal tea. The 3 grown men were a bit bashful at this time. They also really wanted to drink the tea brewed by the Duchess. But the last time they drank tea, they were scolded terribly by the commander and even locked in a dark room because a knight's status does not match that of a duchess. Hearing that the knights were punished because of her, Luo Fei felt very apologetic. The knights also felt very regretful that they couldn't taste the tea brewed by the Duchess again. How could she let them drink the tea she brewed? Luo Fei pondered for a while and ran off in a flash. Not long after, Luo Fei returned, holding a bunch of bottles filled with tea in her arms. Luo Fei handed these teas to the knights. The knights couldn't wait and poured it into their mouths. After one gulp, they instantly felt incredibly refreshed. Moreover, the tea also had a fruity aroma. Luo Fei explained, this is peach-scented oolong tea. Because oolong tea absorbs the aroma of peaches, it has a sweet peach scent when you drink it. Afterwards, Luo Fei also gave the knights some tea leaves from her hometown and told them how to brew it. Luo Fei also said she would plead with the commander to allow them to sit down and drink tea with her. Because you're all my precious friends. The 3 knights were stunned. How is this an aloof duchess? She's clearly an approachable angel. The knights returned to the knight's order. After training, they deliberately took out the tea Luo Fei gave them to drink. After arousing their comrades' curiosity, they hugged it tightly and wouldn't let others see. They even had smug expressions on their faces. You don't even know what oolong tea is. What a bunch of country bumpkins. Your Grace, Madam will be going out tomorrow to buy a tea set. I have official business tomorrow and can't go. Butler, you accompany Madam on the trip. Hearing the Duke's words, the butler was very surprised. Could it be that the Duke had originally planned to go with Madam? Seeing the Duke and Madam drinking tea together every day recently, he thought it was just that the Duke had taken a liking to drinking tea. Now it seemed that his grace had truly fallen for her. The next day, the butler accompanied Luo Fei to the market. They finally found a tea set shop. Just as they were about to walk towards the shop, a carriage stopped right in front of them. A man stepped down from the carriage. Isn't this our Duke? The Duke awkwardly explained. Today's official business was temporarily canceled. It just so happens that it's not far, so I came over to take a look. What a lame lie, Luo Fei thought. But verbally she said, yes, that's really a coincidence. The butler on the side, seeing the 2 people who coincidentally met like this, hurriedly said he had something to buy and ran off in a flash. Seeing the butler leave, the Duke reached out his hand to Luo Fei and said, Madam, are you buying a tea set? I'll accompany you. Luo Fei looked at the Duke and shyly held his hand. The couple arrived at the tea set shop. Looking at the dazzling array of tea sets, Luo Fei was extremely delighted. What Duke? What husband? She threw it all to the back of her mind. She ran straight to the shelves, picked up a tea set, and happily played with it. This completely baffled the Duke. How is this any different from the coffee cups at home? Luo Fei immediately explained seriously. Of course it's different. To make the tea aroma diffuse more easily, and to make it convenient to appreciate the tea's color. The design has a shallower bottom and a wider mouth than a coffee cup. Looking at Luo Fei talking endlessly with little stars shining in her eyes, the Duke asked, do you like the things in this shop? Luo Fei nodded. With a wave of his hand, the Duke said, Boss, wrap up all the tea sets in the shop. Is there this kind of person around you who has contracted a bitchy disease? The main symptom is not being able to stand seeing others do well. our Duchess had the fortune to encounter one. Today, Luo Fei hosted a tea party, inviting many noble women. Among them, Madame Zimao had contracted this disease. Before the tea party even started, Madame Zimao sarcastically said, "I heard Madame likes to drink water steeped from leaves. I don't know what others think, but I feel it's a bit too vulgar." Luo Fei smiled politely and replied, "I know there are many guests today who, like you, don't drink tea often, so I prepared carefully, hoping to change everyone's view on tea." Then she turned around to talk and laugh with other ladies, leaving Madame Zimao hanging. Soon, the tea sets were brought up. These were blue and white porcelain teacups made by the Wen Kingdom, possessing a very exotic charm. While the ladies were all admiring the tea sets, Madame Zimao spoke up again. "I heard that people from the Wen Kingdom even sleep on the floor. They are simply like primitive people." Luo Fei retorted, "This is their unique and long-standing cultural habit. We cannot casually comment on other people's lifestyles." Luo Fei stood up and began brewing tea. Her slender fingers roamed over the blue and white porcelain teacups, drawing soft praises from the ladies. The tea was brewed, and a milky aroma permeated the air. The ladies began to taste it. They were all won over by this sweet taste. Luo Fei explained, "The tea leaves of this tea are called milk oolong, which emits a sweet milky aroma." Madame Zimao on the side suddenly stood up. "How can a few broken leaves have a milky aroma? She must have added milk inside." Before Luo Fei could speak, a lady next to her spoke first. "This tea is crystal clear. If milk was added, it would definitely become cloudy, right?" The other ladies chimed in one after another and expressed their gratitude to Luo Fei for letting them taste such unique tea. It was too awkward for her. Just when Luo Fei had put on an expression ready to take whatever came her way, a maid actually barged in. After Madame Potter tasted the tea brewed by Luo Fei, she developed a strong interest in tea. After the tea party ended, she came to the ducal mansion to visit. Luo Fei brought out homemade milk jam to entertain Madame Potter. After tasting it, Madame Potter exclaimed that it was delicious and was full of praise for this novel thing. She then suggested that Luo Fei use this jam to do business. Luo Fei appeared to lack confidence. "Will anyone buy these things?" At this time, the Duke happened to pass by and heard the two talking about doing business. He was curious. Then, he took a piece of bread, spread some milk jam on it, and tasted it. The flavor was indeed quite good. He felt it should have a market. He turned and asked Luo Fei, "Do you want to use this to do business?" Luo Fei replied, "I don't have anything else to do anyway. Doing a little business should be quite interesting." The Duke readily agreed. After Madame Potter returned, seeing her husband, she couldn't wait to share what happened at the Duke's house with him. That once cold Duke, who was not interested in women, looking at his wife with such eyes. It seemed the iron tree was about to bloom. On the other side, Luo Fei and the Duke were discussing the specific details of opening a shop. Luo Fei's ideas made the Duke see her in a new light, because in the Empire, women rarely learned about business. He didn't expect the Duchess to possess such professional knowledge. After the two finished their discussion, the Duke walked Luo Fei back to her bedroom to rest. Just as the Duke was about to leave, Luo Fei asked softly, "Do you want to sit for a while longer?" The Duke's footsteps suddenly stopped. Luo Fei felt a bit awkward, thinking, does he really want to sit for a while longer? Then, the Duke actually sat right down. Subsequently, a hand caressed Luo Fei's face. Luo Fei blushed and subconsciously closed her eyes. Right at this thrilling moment, the door was suddenly opened. "Madam, your delivery." The Duke and Luo Fei were invited to attend a ball. When they appeared in the hall arm in arm, they instantly became the focus of the entire venue. People whispered, "Is this really the Duchess?" Didn't they say the Duchess lacked confidence and that the Duke didn't like her? But seeing the two talking and laughing, it didn't feel like the rumors at all. The Duke lowered his head and told Luo Fei, "I'm going to discuss some official business. I'll be right back." After the Duke left, a former pursuer of the Duke came forward to provoke Luo Fei. Unfortunately, her level wasn't high enough. Luo Fei KO'd her in just a few words. Soon, it was time to dance. Luo Fei stood by the dance floor, holding a wine glass. At this time, a nobleman came to invite Luo Fei to dance. Luo Fei hesitated for a moment and agreed. However, when her hand was in midair, it was snatched away by the Duke. He said very seriously to the nobleman, "What do you want with my wife?" The nobleman was stunned by the question. In the Empire, inviting a married woman to dance was a very common thing. It was just a normal social activity. Why was His Grace the Duke so serious? But looking at the Duke's eyes, "Forget it, better slip away quickly." Luo Fei stood there nervously. The Duke pulled Luo Fei and walked onto the dance floor. The dance music was beautiful, but Luo Fei's steps were very stiff. She whispered timidly into the Duke's ear, Duke, I actually don't know how to dance. The Duke responded dominantly, then leave it all to me. The Duke held Luo Fei and glided across the dance floor, single-handedly winning the cheers of the audience. After a song, Luo Fei felt a bit tired and went to her room to rest. In the room, a group of old women were chatting. As soon as Luo Fei sat down, she felt something was wrong, because this group of old women was discussing some particularly private topics. These old noble women were chatting about intimate matters between men and women. Seeing Luo Fei sit down, they all revealed malicious expressions. A sinister-looking older woman asked Luo Fei, "Is the private time at night between you and His Grace the Duke pleasant?" An older woman next to her also chimed in with a beaming face. "How often do you two have marital relations? Is it once a week? Or could it be only once a month?" Luo Fei was shocked by the malice of these older women. It was well known that the Duke didn't love his wife. That was why they dared to humiliate her like this. Luo Fei coldly replied to them, "Ladies, you are being too unreasonable. At your age, your words are still so frivolous. Perhaps you're speaking so carelessly because you're close to each other. But asking such questions when we meet for the first time, isn't that an offense to me and the Duke? I hope you all know when to stop. If there's a next time, don't blame me for showing no mercy." Then, Luo Fei slammed the door and left. She happened to meet the Duke at the door. Seeing the Duke's extended hand, the image of that kiss flashed in her mind. Luo Fei quickly dodged. The Duke looked bewildered, not knowing what had happened. After the ball ended, the Duke stopped Luo Fei, wanting to ask her what was wrong. Looking at the Duke's face, Luo Fei recalled the events of that night again, blushed, and wanted to escape. But the Duke pulled Luo Fei into his arms and kissed her. Coincidentally, the butler pushed the door and came in. Although he didn't see anything, based on this bizarre atmosphere, something must have just happened. Luo Fei had been passionately kissed by the Duke during the day. Now, lying in bed, she was tossing and turning, unable to sleep. At this time, the sound of the Duke knocking on the door suddenly rang out outside. Luo Fei instantly became so nervous that she started sweating. Could the Duke be planning to do something indescribable to her? What should she do? She wasn't mentally prepared yet. However, opening the door left Luo Fei disappointed. The Duke just came to tell her that Madame Mason was coming tomorrow. Although Luo Fei was very nervous, she still promised that she would definitely be a qualified duchess. The next day, everyone in the ducal mansion came out together to welcome Madame Mason. Mason glanced at Luo Fei and then asked the Duke, "Is this your wife?" Luo Fei respectfully bowed to Mason, but Mason ignored her. She walked straight past her and said that she was a bit tired from the journey and needed to find a place to rest for a while. Mason sat in the reception room. Seeing Madame Mason sweating continuously from the heat, Luo Fei quickly went to the kitchen to prepare a drink for her. Mason asked the Duke, "She didn't go to the kitchen personally, did she?" As the Duchess, going to a place where servants work, how improper. A few minutes later, Luo Fei, along with a maid, brought over a few cups of golden tea. Mason couldn't hold back anymore. Only commoners drink tea. You actually use such a vulgar thing to entertain guests. As the Duchess, you truly don't understand any etiquette at all. At this time, the Duke stepped in to smooth things over. "You should try it first. The tea my wife brews is very special. You might actually like it." Mason was stunned. She didn't expect the Duke to actually speak up for Luo Fei. Mason picked up the cup and took a sip. The feeling of sweltering heat on her body disappeared in an instant. Madame Mason rarely complimented, saying, "It's not bad." Night fell. Mason looked out the window. She recalled the events of the day. The Duke was actually speaking up for Luo Fei. She had never seen the Duke act like that before. It seemed she could tell Luo Fei about the Duke's childhood experiences. Others' impression of the Duke is that he is cold and ruthless. But do you know what he went through in his childhood? Madame Mason looked at Luo Fei and said, "The Duke was raised by me. I treat him like my own son." Although the Duke's father was knowledgeable and talented, he was arrogant and conceited. In the eyes of outsiders, he was a cold-blooded animal. The Duke was calm and smart from a young age, but his father was still not satisfied. He hoped his son would be more outstanding than himself. To be precise, he should be more cold-blooded. The Duke was often taught by his father like this: do not expose your feelings to others. Having emotions like joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness is shameful. You must learn restraint and endurance. Only then can you become a perfect noble. Whenever the Duke showed any emotional fluctuation, he would be severely punished by his father. Gradually, the Duke in his childhood formed a morbid self-control. He wouldn't cry when beaten. He wouldn't smile when happy. Even if he didn't eat for 4 days, he could still eat without losing his grace. Until the Duke was 10 years old. He questioned his father. Father, humans are born with emotions of joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness. I don't understand why I have to live like this. I think your method of education is wrong. His father stared fiercely at the Duke. Can you take responsibility for what you've said? Subsequently, the Duke was locked into a small dark room. The Duke resisted with all his might, but this cold-blooded father remained indifferent. In the first month, the Duke was still yelling and resisting. By the 3rd month, the Duke began to kneel and beg for mercy. By the 6th month, the Duke stopped speaking, only curling up his body and trembling in the dark. It wasn't until the 11th month that the dying Duke was finally let out. The Duke was locked in the small dark room by his father for a full 11 months. In this room, there was no one who could talk to the Duke. Only endless darkness accompanied him. 3 meals a day and a chamber pot. After being let out, the Duke became numb and apathetic. Although his heart was full of resentment, he didn't dare to show it. Later, when the Duke was 14 years old, the carriage his father was riding and had an accident, leading to his death. At the funeral, the Duke finally dared to express his anger. His anger wasn't directed at the carriage that caused his father's death, but because his father died too easily. Madame Mason continued to recount to Luo Fei. After the Duke's father passed away, as his only relative, I adopted him. At that time, the Duke looked neither like a human nor a ghost. Later, after 4 years of my careful care, I barely managed to help him recover to his current state. Luo Fei listened silently, feeling an inexplicable heartache. She didn't expect the Duke's childhood to be so tragic. She said goodbye to Mason and walked out of the room. Unexpectedly, the Duke was outside the door. The Duke spoke. You know everything now. Luo Fei was just about to speak. The Duke interrupted her. The reason I never mentioned it to you, my wife, is because those are all things of the past. It's enough that it tormented me. Why make you sad along with me? But when he turned his head again, Luo Fei was already crying loudly. Luo Fei choked with sobs and said, I want to cry for you. Why? You endured all that, but never cried. And you kept them hidden deep in your heart. Alphonse, I hope you can be happy. I will always stay by your side. Madame Mason was about to leave. The Duke's family came to see Mason off. Mason hugged Luo Fei tightly and said, Thank you. It's good that you are by Alphonse's side. The Duke and Luo Fei returned to the living room. The Duke told Luo Fei, the shop's renovation is almost done. Let's find some time to go take a look. Luo Fei's face was full of anticipation. The thought of soon having her own shop made her a little excited. The next day, the Duke and Luo Fei arrived at the shop. Looking at the renovated shop, Luo Fei muttered to herself, Everything about this shop is good, except it's a bit too big. But thinking that it will open soon, I'm still extremely happy. When she heard the Duke ask her to name the shop, Luo Fei was so excited she became incoherent. Seeing Luo Fei's happy appearance, the Duke said gently, This shop is my birthday gift to you. Hearing this, Luo Fei was completely stunned. What did the Duke become so considerate? The Duke spoke again, Your birthday is coming soon. Is there anything? Before the Duke could finish his sentence, Luo Fei threw herself directly into the Duke's arms. Duke, thank you. Luo Fei lay in the bathtub with a look of facing death unflinchingly. The maid was vigorously scrubbing her body. Today was the day agreed upon with the Duke to make a baby. Thinking of this, Luo Fei's face flushed red with shyness. At night, the Duke pushed the door and came in. Madam, have you been waiting for me for a long time? Luo Fei stammered in reply, Not that long. I also just finished taking a bath. Before she could finish her sentence, Luo Fei was pinned onto the bed by the Duke. The Duke looked at her affectionately and asked, Madam, are you ready? How could a girl answer such a question? Luo Fei could only blush deeply and stay silent. The Duke was once again captivated by Luo Fei's shy and cute appearance. He opened his mouth and kissed Luo Fei. The next morning, Luo Fei woke up in the Duke's arms. Just as she wanted to get up, she found her whole body aching and couldn't get up at all. It seemed she got quite a workout last night. The Duke helplessly called the doctor. The doctor stated, This is because you don't exercise regularly. Muscle soreness is caused after suddenly doing strenuous exercise. There are no other problems. He prescribed some hot compress herbal packs to relieve the soreness. At the same time, he advised Luo Fei to exercise more usually. Seeing the Duchess tossed about like this, the maids discussed in private that last night, the Duke and Duchess must have been very happy. 2 men went head to head just to be able to drink tea with Luo Fei. Luo Fei was tasting tea. Suddenly, a red-haired man barged in. Looking at the person who came, Luo Fei almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. This person was the eldest prince of the empire. He was famously flirtatious and didn't attend to his duties, so he had long been delayed in being crown prince. The awkward part was that Luo Fei had once confessed her love to the eldest prince. Not only did the other party not agree, but he also mocked her to her face. At this time, the Duke happened to return. The eldest prince looked at the Duke and arrogantly stated, "I want to have a cup of tea alone with Luo Fei." The Duke didn't show any weakness either. "I'm sorry, I also really want to drink tea right now." The smell of gunpowder instantly rose. The eldest prince ultimately chose to compromise. "Fine then, who asked her to be your wife now?" Luo Fei was somewhat speechless. Where did this guy get the confidence to argue with her husband? Did he still think she liked him? But the other party was a prince after all, so it was better to try and satisfy his request. Luo Fei smiled bitterly and asked him what kind of tea he wanted to drink. The eldest prince smugly replied, "My taste, don't you know?" Luo Fei was even more speechless. How would she know his taste? A moment later, Luo Fei brought the two of them fragrant floral tea. The Duke was very curious. "Why does this tea have both a floral scent and a fruity scent?" Luo Fei explained, "I added bergamot essential oil, which has a fruity and floral scent, into the tea. But I was worried the bergamot scent would be too sweet and cloying. To neutralize the flavor, I deliberately added calendula petals." The eldest prince looked at the petals in the tea and secretly felt proud. "Calendula is the same color as my eyes." The Duke also smiled slightly. "Calendula is the same color as my hair. Have you ever seen someone so thick-skinned?" Just because the petals in the tea Luo Fei brewed for him were the same color as his eyes, he thought our female lead still had lingering feelings for him. The eldest prince stirred up trouble at the Duke's house, then patted his butt and prepared to leave. Before leaving, right in front of the Duke, he suddenly grabbed Luo Fei's hand and said he was looking forward to their next meeting. The Duke was quick-eyed and deft-handed, slapping away the eldest prince's wandering hands. "This is my wife." The eldest prince laughed shamelessly and even mocked the Duke for being jealous of him. Subsequently, he got into his carriage and left smoothly. The atmosphere instantly became awkward. The Duke was in a very bad mood at this time. He didn't understand why he was so upset. It was clearly just an arranged marriage to satisfy mutual interests. Even if she had a secret affair with the eldest prince, what did it have to do with him? Thinking of this, the Duke gradually calmed down. He took out a gift he had prepared long ago and gave it to Luo Fei. Luo Fei took the gift and looked at the glittering gold inside the box. Then she looked up at the Duke. "Are you expressing your gratitude to me by giving a gift? If you want to thank me, please change the way. I didn't become your wife because I coveted your wealth." Luo Fei looked at the puzzled Duke, sighed, and said, "For example, you could look at me gently and then show a heartfelt smile." But the Duke still stood there blankly, with no reaction at all. Luo Fei suddenly felt very disappointed. She threw the box to the Duke, turned around, and left. Her mind was in a mess. "I thought our relationship had gotten much closer. Could it all be my wishful thinking?" Because of the eldest prince's interference, Luo Fei and the Duke were still in a Cold War phase. Just at this time, the royal family held a tea party. Luo Fei had no choice but to accompany the Duke to the appointment extremely reluctantly. At the tea party, the Empress asked Luo Fei what she liked to do usually. Luo Fei was just about to speak, but the Duke answered first, "My wife likes drinking tea." The Duke's words shocked everyone. A nobleman next to them said sarcastically, "The Duchess's hobby is truly special." As soon as he finished speaking, the Duke instantly stood up. "I know that in the Empire, everyone has a deep prejudice against tea, but my wife has a profound understanding of tea culture. You guys will understand once you take a sip." Hearing this, the Emperor also became interested. "Then please, Duchess, brew a few cups of tea for us to taste." Luo Fei stood up and replied, "It is my honor to brew tea for everyone. Then I will show my meager skills." The tea was brewed. The Emperor tasted the tea brewed by Luo Fei and was full of praise. At the same time, he said to the Duke, "Having such an outstanding wife, you must be very proud." As soon as the Emperor finished speaking, the eldest prince came out to show off again. "Seeing how awkward the atmosphere is between you two, did you have a fight?" This eldest prince was truly a troublemaker. Stirring up trouble at the Duke's house wasn't enough. He had to butt in at a time like this too. On the way home, the Duke kept apologizing, while Luo Fei pretended to be indifferent. Until the moment they got out of the carriage, the Duke suddenly hugged Luo Fei. "I'm sorry, Madam, I don't know how to express my feelings, but I will study hard, so please wait for me." Luo Fei finally couldn't hold back anymore. She smiled sweetly. "MHM, I'll wait for you." The headmaid smiled grimly. She knew her opportunity had come again. Tonight, the Duke and Luo Fei were going to attend a grand banquet. The makeup artists were dressing and doing makeup for Luo Fei. Luo Fei looked at herself in the mirror, feeling very awkward. Is this the most popular outfit nowadays? Luo Fei walked out of the dressing room. The servants were not stunned by the Duchess's beauty, but instead had faces full of confusion. Right at this moment, Madame Potter pushed the door and came in. Looking at Luo Fei's styling, she was stunned at first, then immediately grabbed Luo Fei's hand. Quick, come with me. I'll explain on the way. In the carriage, Madame Potter told Luo Fei, your current styling and dress are exactly the same as the Duke's past lover. If you attend a banquet like this, you will make a huge fool of yourself. I think someone is definitely framing you. Time is urgent now. Let's quickly go to the dress shop and design another dress. Luo Fei finally realized what was going on. It seemed that person was playing tricks again. The two hurried to the dress shop and explained their purpose. The designer stated that there wasn't enough time and they could only add inspiration based on the original foundation. The banquet began. The Duke and Duchess made a gorgeous entrance. The beautiful and moving Luo Fei attracted the eyes of the entire venue. The headmaid, hiding in the dark and peeking, had a face full of surprise. How is this possible? Luo Fei also noticed her at this time and glared at her fiercely. The headmaid broke out in a cold sweat. Knowing that her plot was exposed, she had to run away quickly. But the next second, she was pinned to the ground by the knight's order. She was locked in a room. Subsequently, the Duke walked in and coldly said to her, my wife doesn't want to see you, so she let me handle you on her behalf. The headmaid was whipped 300 times and handed over to the royal court. Subsequently, the headmaid was sentenced to death by the royal court, ending her life tragically. Our aloof Duke has learned to be bad. He actually took advantage of our female lead in the pitch-black opera house. The Duke saw that Luo Fei had been working very hard recently, so he suggested watching an opera to relax a bit. Hearing this, Luo Fei was delighted. The Duke was getting more and more considerate lately. The two arrived at the opera house. Luo Fei shouted excitedly, Duke, we can see the whole stage at a glance from here. However, the Duke sighed. For him, who didn't like opera, this period of time would feel like years. The opera house suddenly went pitch black, leaving only a beam of light hitting the center of the stage. Luo Fei gradually became engrossed in watching. One moment she was laughing out loud, and the next she was shedding sad tears. The Duke stared blankly at Luo Fei. Who am I? Where am I? The Duke couldn't understand it at all and kept yawning as he watched. At this time, the male actor on stage hugged the female actress who was playing dead and kissed her. Seeing this scene, the Duke suddenly perked up. This part is a bit interesting, isn't it? He secretly glanced at Luo Fei, only to see Luo Fei gulp. She also quietly looked toward the Duke. Their eyes met. The Duke smiled wickedly and pulled Luo Fei into his arms. He kissed her. Luo Fei breathed heavily and pushed the Duke away with all her might. What are you doing? In front of everyone. Hearing this, the Duke held her even tighter and said mischievously, I specifically booked a private box. Don't worry, no one will see. Can you believe it? The Duke has now become so brazen that he kisses Luo Fei in front of a crowd of people. The Duke brought Luo Fei to have dinner. Unexpectedly, they ran into the eldest prince. Under the eldest prince's pestering, the Duke and Luo Fei reluctantly sat at the same table with him. The delicious food was served. Luo Fei tasted the long-awaited delicacies. During the meal, the eldest prince introduced his new girlfriend. Hearing this, the Duke smiled awkwardly. Change again? Which one is this month? Luo Fei sat beside them, deep in thought. The food was delicious, but she felt like something was missing. She suddenly said, it's missing jasmine tea. The Duke and the eldest prince were completely baffled by Luo Fei's sudden words. Luo Fei explained embarrassedly, jasmine tea has a refreshing taste and can relieve the greasiness of the food. Our country also has an after-meal habit of drinking jasmine tea. After hearing this, the eldest prince immediately called the boss over. The boss stated that he had also considered selling this kind of tea in shop. However, most people in the empire don't like tea, so he didn't stock it. The eldest prince said cheekily, Luo Fei makes really good tea. Would you like to try some? The restaurant owner looked on with eager anticipation. Luo Fei looked to the Duke for help, but the Duke could only nod helplessly. Luo Fei had no choice but to stand up. Then please, everyone come to our home for tea. Everyone sat in the tea room, savoring the tea when the owner spoke up. The tea is indeed quite good, but the restaurant's customers have a bias against tea. They may not take to it. Luo Fei immediately offered the owner a suggestion. You could have the eldest prince endorse it for you. Luo Fei went on to elaborate on her plan, and the prince joined in the discussion. Watching the two of them get along so well, the Duke wondered, had his wife not only confessed her feelings to the eldest prince in the past, but was she still fond of him even now? To stake his claim, the Duke suddenly pulled Luo Fei into his arms and kissed her directly. After a brief few minutes, the Duke released her. Luo Fei's face flushed red with embarrassment. The eldest prince was thoroughly displeased by the two of them. He pulled his girlfriend close and gave her a kiss of his own. This left the poor restaurant owner beside them at a complete loss. You young people really know how to have fun. Luo Fei had been unusually busy lately, with a great many things at the shop requiring her attention. She was often so exhausted she could barely keep her eyes open. Seeing how energetic and driven Luo Fei was, the Duke chose not to disturb her today. Luo Fei had developed a new flavor of pastry and was about to let the knights taste it. But just as she handed the pastry to the knight commander, Luo Fei suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed to the ground. Before the commander could even come over to help her up, Luo Fei had already picked herself up. She insisted she had simply lost her footing and that she might be a little anemic lately. The commander expressed his concern. "You've looked quite pale these past few days. You must see a doctor when you get home." Luo Fei staggered and stumbled all the way home. When she finally arrived, the Duke was already waiting to have dinner with her. Luo Fei sat down and ate listlessly, without any energy. The Duke noticed how haggard Luo Fei looked. She seemed to be coming down with something and strode over to her side. The moment he touched her forehead, Luo Fei fainted. The doctor was called at once to examine her and reported, "The Duchess has fainted from overexertion." In fact, she had already been showing symptoms several days ago. Upon hearing this, the Duke was both heartbroken and furious. He reprimanded the servants sternly. "How have you all been attending to the Duchess?" The knight commander, having heard the news, also rushed over to take responsibility. He admitted that he had noticed several days ago that Luo Fei's color was poor. The Duke glared at him fiercely. "Then why didn't you report it to me immediately?" The commander replied with a sense of grievance. "Because you once said, Your Grace, that minor matters concerning the Duchess need not be reported to you." Upon hearing this, the Duke was filled with deep remorse. It turned out that the fault lay entirely with himself. The Duke gently stroked Luo Fei's pale face. "Once, the Duchess and I were simply in a marriage of convenience, each getting what we needed from the other. As for love, that was something I considered irrelevant. Until one day, the Duchess began to change. She made demands of me for the first time. Gradually, I found myself looking forward to seeing her smile at me, and the sorrowful tears she shed for me. It was a feeling I had never experienced before. I don't know when it happened, but I fell in love with her, with Luo Fei. As long as I could see your smile, I am willing to do anything." In her sleep, Luo Fei vaguely sensed something like a small bug at the corner of her mouth. She opened her eyes, and it was the Duke. This scoundrel was taking advantage of her. Luo Fei shoved him away. "Is this what you call reverence?" The doctor came running at the commotion. After an examination, he declared the Duchess is out of danger. Upon hearing this, Luo Fei was overjoyed. She could finally escape the bedroom. But when she opened the door, the Duke was standing outside. "You're still a patient. You're not going anywhere." To prevent Luo Fei from making another escape, the Duke even moved his office into the bedroom. At the same time, so that Luo Fei wouldn't be so overworked, the Duke decided to find a financial expert on the condition that the person must be a woman, because he had no intention of having a man spending all day at his wife's side. In the end, they found a woman named Ruzhan, who came from an eastern land. Looking at Ruzhan's appearance and manner of dress, Luo Fei felt an inexplicable sense of warmth and familiarity. She mentioned that she loved drinking tea and invited Ruzhan to sit down for a cup and a chat. Ruzhan assumed it was just something the Duchess said in passing. But when she stepped into the tea room, she was astonished. The entire room was filled with tea leaves. And even more unbelievable was this. The tea brewed by the Duchess gave her a taste of home. Afterward, Luo Fei also gave her some tea leaves to take with her. Watching Luo Fei's words and actions, Ruzhan realized she was quite different from what she had imagined. The Duke and Duchess were to attend a soiree. At the soiree, a crowd of people surrounded the Duke, fawning over him. "Your Grace, you truly are a man of extraordinary talent. Such a fresh and novel idea. How did you ever think of it? The Duke responded, "Triple sweet. I had absolutely nothing to do with it. It was entirely my wife who ran the whole operation." He then pulled Luo Fei over and introduced her to the crowd. This left the assembled noblemen utterly stunned, and they all began to ask Luo Fei for advice. Luo Fei spoke candidly, leaving everyone wide-eyed and amazed. One nobleman was so inspired that he immediately wanted to invite Luo Fei for a dance. But the jealous one nearby would never allow it. A few deliberate coughs were all it took. The murderous aura in the air spread instantly, so frightening the nobleman that he could only withdraw his hand. Luo Fei was in very high spirits that evening and had a few extra drinks. Seeing Luo Fei drunk, the Duke promptly snatched away her glass. "It's getting late. We should head home." Luo Fei turned her head away. "I haven't had enough yet." She ducked behind Madame Potter. "I haven't been out in so long. I don't want to go back this soon." Just then, a servant informed the Duke that someone had an important matter to report to him in person. The Duke glanced at Luo Fei, who was making a drunken scene, and had no choice but to entrust her to Madame Potter's care for the moment. The moment she saw the Duke leave, Luo Fei completely let herself go, hugging this person one moment and that person the next. She even invited the men present to dance, and there were actually those who raised their hands. Fortunately, the Duke returned just in time and sent the man away. The Duke said helplessly, "Even when you're drunk, you can't just do whatever you please." Luo Fei laughed and turned to throw herself into the Duke's arms. "I missed you so much." The Duke looked at Luo Fei and thought, the Duchess would never act like this normally. A drunk Duchess is really quite adorable. After getting drunk, Luo Fei engaged in a rather close encounter with the Duke and was unusually forward about it. The next day, Luo Fei opened her eyes to find herself lying alone in bed. She thought she must be dreaming, but when she got up, the aching all over her body told her that something had indeed happened last night. Luo Fei lay face down on the bed, fuming. "So you just wiped your hands clean and disappeared?" She hadn't seen the Duke all day. Just then, a maidservant told Luo Fei that the Duke was back and in his study. Luo Fei stormed off furiously toward the Duke's study. She pushed the door open. The Duke looked up to see Luo Fei standing there, lips pursed in a pout. He asked, "What's the matter, my dear? You have the nerve to ask me what's wrong?" Luo Fei plopped herself down on the sofa and demanded, "You came home awfully late today." Faced with Luo Fei's questioning, the Duke's gaze shifted and wandered evasively. Luo Fei continued, "I waited for you all day, and there was no sign of you. After all, I am your wife. I worry about you." Upon hearing this, the Duke broke into a cold sweat and hurried to explain. "There was a reason I came home late today." He produced a contract as he spoke. Luo Fei looked at the contract with curiosity. Then her face filled with disbelief. It was a royal aerial survey contract. Luo Fei leapt up with joy and threw herself into the Duke's arms. Watching Luo Fei's delight, the Duke said, as if relieved of a great burden, "You're not angry anymore, are you?" At the same time, the Duke quietly asked about our agreement. Could we revise it? Once a month is really too infrequent. Luo Fei rolled her eyes. "Let me think about it." Why did the Duke insist on finding a woman who didn't love him? Luo Fei finally understood the reason today. At a tea party, Luo Fei encountered the Duke's ex-girlfriend. She provoked Luo Fei relentlessly, going on and on about how sweet her past with the Duke had been, and what expensive gifts he had bought her. Yet she never once mentioned what kind of person the Duke himself was. It seemed the Duke had had a very troubled romantic past, which had left him utterly disillusioned with love. And so the marriage of convenience with Luo Fei came about. One day, Luo Fei returned from shopping, and the Duke came over. He reminded Luo Fei that she had only just recovered and needed a rest. Luo Fei was very happy to hear this. She hadn't expected the Duke to care about others like this now. She said to him cheerfully, "We seem to have grown much closer." But then Luo Fei suddenly thought of the Duke's ex-girlfriend and the matter of the marriage agreement. She added, "You don't need to worry. I won't fall in love with you." The Duke was instantly crestfallen. The marriage agreement had been his own idea. Yet now, he had already fallen in love with the woman standing before him. The Duke did not let his feelings show. He simply gave a light, non-committal reply. After returning, the Duke grew more and more unsettled the more he thought about it. He sought Luo Fei out again and found her busy at work. The Duke suddenly pulled her into his arms and, without a word, pressed his lips to hers. After a brief moment of breathlessness, Luo Fei gasped for air. The Duke asked teasingly, "Have you given any more thought to revising the marriage agreement?" "Even if you haven't, it doesn't matter. After all, a month has already passed. Luo Fei, upon hearing this, asked nervously, Alphonse, you're not thinking of doing it right here, are you? Just as the two of them were caught up in the heat of the moment, Ruzhen came up to the loft and called out, My lady, there are several guests who wish to see you. Luo Fei hurriedly straightened her clothes and answered in a trembling voice. Ruzhen was completely bewildered. It seemed that just moments ago, something rather extraordinary had been happening in the storeroom. Is this really how the nobility of the empire amuses themselves? Lately, the Duke had been having some rather peculiar thoughts. Whenever he saw Luo Fei, he would feel an involuntary, sharp pang inside, a burning desire to possess everything about her. Yet everything about her didn't yet seem to belong entirely to him. He wanted her every expression, her every word and action to be about him alone. He wanted her pure smile to exist only because of him. He often thought about locking her away so that everything about her could belong solely to him alone. But could he really do such a thing? Watching Luo Fei chattering away happily, the Duke sipped his tea and thought. He couldn't do that. If he truly locked her away, she would never again wear that blissful smile. She would never again radiate that pure and passionate vitality. Compared to his own selfish desires, her radiant smile was far more precious. But there was one thing, having that belong only to himself would be enough. With that thought, the Duke moved to sit beside Luo Fei. He then leaned in and kissed her, pressing Luo Fei back onto the sofa. Luo Fei called out Alphonse's name in a panic. This isn't the bedroom, the Duke said with a roguish smile, but it's not outside either. That's fine. Luo Fei's face was flushed crimson as she shook her head and kept saying no. The Duke replied domineeringly, If you're still unwilling, then I'll just have to help you become willing. And so, a beautiful moment unfolded with spring in full bloom. After Luo Fei had fainted from overexertion, she had taken up dancing lessons, and today was the day of her examination. Though she had long since prepared herself, the moment she heard the word exam, Luo Fei couldn't help but feel nervous. All the steps and movements she had learned before seemed to have completely vanished from her mind. Just then, there was a knock at the dance studio door, and the Duke pushed it open and walked in. Luo Fei's face lit up with delight when she saw him. She went over and asked, What brings you here? The Duke said gently, I heard you had your exam today, so I came. The dance instructor, watching the two of them, really couldn't bear to witness any more of this display of affection. She cleared her throat. We can begin the examination now. I'll take the gentleman's part. The Duchess simply needs to dance the lady's part. The Duke interjected, Allow me to take the gentleman's part. The Duke looked down at Luo Fei. Today's exam is the waltz. Please get ready. Luo Fei whispered back, Don't go easy on me on purpose. The Duke smiled warmly. Whatever my lady wishes. The Duke and Luo Fei gazed at each other with deep affection. The music began, and the two of them danced gracefully. At this very moment, the two of them finally broke down all barriers and opened their hearts, truly accepting each other. And so their journey of happiness began. After the dance, Luo Fei passed her exam with flying colors. The Duke kissed Luo Fei in front of everyone. The examiner's jaw nearly hit the floor. Luo Fei was mortified. How could he do something like this in public? If you're going to do it, it should only be when the two of you are alone. Have you ever seen such a devoted boss? Contributing money, time, and effort alike, all just to help a subordinate ease her difficult relationship with her in-laws and work in peace. When Luo Fei met the usually fierce Madame Locke, who arrived late, she asked with concern, Madame Locke, is something troubling you? Your color doesn't look very good. If something is the matter, perhaps I can help. Madame Locke, upon being asked this, hesitated somewhat before replying. But this is, after all, a private matter of mine. Seeing Madame Locke's reluctance, Luo Fei explained, While assisting me is your job, caring for you and looking after your well-being is also my duty. So you can tell me about your troubles without any hesitation. Moved by the Duchess's sincerity, Madame Locke slowly began to share her story. Madame Locke and her husband had married for love and should have been very happy. But her father-in-law and mother-in-law were displeased with her as a daughter-in-law because her family background did not match the Locke family social standing. In order to gain their approval, Madame Locke had made many efforts, all to no avail. Luo Fei listened, realizing she had troubles of this kind as well, and asked, What are your father-in-law and mother-in-law particularly fond of? Upon hearing that her father-in-law enjoyed wine and tea, Luo Fei immediately had an idea. She brought Madame Locke to the tea room and shared her own unique recipe for tea cocktails. with Madame Locke and also gave her some of the ingredients to take home. This moved Madame Locke deeply. After Madame Locke returned home, she followed Luo Fei's method and prepared tea cocktails for her father-in-law and mother-in-law to taste. The fussy in-laws were very pleased. This became the turning point that helped Madame Locke mend her relationship with her in-laws. The long summer finally passed, and a romantic autumn arrived in its wake. At dinner one evening, the Duke told Luo Fei he was planning to take her on a holiday for a proper rest. Luo Fei was overjoyed upon hearing this, but still feigned composure and asked, "It's autumn now. Isn't it rather an odd time for a holiday?" The Duke replied, "I have a rose estate that is perfectly suited for an autumn getaway." And so the Duke and Duchess set off, and after 2 days of travel, they finally arrived at the rose estate. The moment Luo Fei stepped out of the carriage, she was struck breathless by the beauty before her. It was truly magnificent. The Duke and Duchess sat on the grand terrace, sipping afternoon tea and taking in the beautiful scenery, utterly at ease. That evening, Luo Fei finally sank into the grand bed she had been dreaming of. After sitting in a carriage for 2 whole days, her body felt as though it was falling apart. Just as Luo Fei was about to drift off to sleep, she heard the Duke's knock at the door. The moment the Duke stepped inside, he said to Luo Fei, "I missed you, so I can't have a chat." Luo Fei looked completely unconvinced. After a brief, awkward pause, Luo Fei and the Duke somehow ended up lying side by side on the bed. Luo Fei talked on and on about her marketing plans, while the Duke was completely distracted, his gaze fixed on Luo Fei's lips. Suddenly, the Duke kissed her directly. Taking advantage of the moment, she came up for air. The Duke pulled her beneath him and was about to press his advantage further. Luo Fei braced herself and hurriedly refused. "We've been sitting in a carriage for 2 days. I am absolutely exhausted. Wasn't the whole point of this holiday to let me recover? You can't possibly make me even more tired." The Duke froze upon hearing this. When had his self-control become so poor? At breakfast, the Duke raised the matter of the premarital agreement again. Luo Fei was so startled that she sprayed milk all over the table. The Duke paid it no mind and continued, "I no longer wish to abide by that agreement. Let's discuss revising the terms." Luo Fei wiped the corner of her mouth, her face red, and replied, "Let's talk about this another time." The Duke pressed urgently, "We've already put this off several times. I feel that in order to maintain an intimate and close marital relationship, being intimate once a month is far too little. I'm thinking we should settle on a more appropriate frequency." Before the Duke could finish, Luo Fei coughed twice and tentatively asked, "How about every 2 weeks?" The Duke replied firmly, "No, that's still too infrequent." Luo Fei probed again, "Then once a week?" The Duke still shook his head, unsatisfied. The two of them haggled back and forth like bargaining in a market. Luo Fei's face burned red as she thought to herself, "Just how often does this man want it?" Finally at a loss, she asked, "So what exactly are you thinking?" The Duke looked at her with a triumphant air, then pulled out a cigar with a celebratory flourish and said excitedly, "Let's just delete that clause entirely. I think it's rather inappropriate to put something so private between husband and wife into a contract." Luo Fei lowered her head and thought, if the restriction on frequency was removed, that would mean any time at all would be fair game. Luo Fei rolled her eyes. This man was far more of a repressed flirt than he appeared. The maids of the Duke's household had lately been whispering among themselves. The Duke and Luo Fei shared a room so often, so why was there still no sign of any movement? Normally, a woman in such circumstances ought to be with child by now. Perhaps she was simply born with a more delicate constitution. After all, hadn't she fainted from overexertion not long ago? These words happened to be overheard by Luo Fei as she passed by. The head of the maids flew into a fury and was about to punish the maids for gossiping about their mistress. Luo Fei stopped her. "They mean no harm. They're just worried about me. Good night." Luo Fei sat alone on the bed, puzzled herself. How was it that there was still no movement in her belly? A few days later, Luo Fei accompanied the Duke to a royal banquet. The Duke was becoming more and more brazen. Right in front of countless people, he pulled Luo Fei into a kiss. He even personally fed Luo Fei at the banquet table. When the Duke speared a piece of steak from the plate, he personally fed Luo Fei at the banquet table. When the Duke speared a piece of steak on a fork and held it out toward Luo Fei, saying, "Open up," everyone at the table froze mid-motion, staring at the Duke's fork-holding hand, utterly astonished beyond words. Luo Fei was so mortified she didn't know where to put herself. To escape the awkwardness, she made up an excuse and slipped away to the restroom. Just as she reached the doorway, she heard a woman inside saying, "I hear the Duke and his wife are on the verge of divorce. Yet they put on such a loving display." "What acting?" Another woman chimed in, "Truly something else. I heard it too. The Duchess can't have children, so the Duke is already making preparations for a divorce." Luo Fei could bear no more. She shoved the door open forcefully and said furiously, "What do you mean, put on a display? Are you talking about me and my husband?" After the banquet, Luo Fei was in a very foul mood. She sat alone, lost in troubled thoughts. She and the Duke had already been living together for 20 months, and yet throughout all that time, she had never managed to conceive a child. In this world, a child was the entire reason for marriage. I suppose Alphonse must think the same way. But things being as they are now, if things continued like this, the Duke might gradually grow weary of her. He might even revert to being that cold, heartless man he once was, and then hand her a divorce agreement. Though if that day came, I could still live on my own, I have assets, and my own career. But even so, it won't do. If this had been half a year ago, even a divorce from him might not have meant much to me. It wouldn't have come to being tormented by feelings the way I am now. If I can't give him a child, can I really call myself a wife who loves him? Luo Fei walked into the Duke's study, her eyes red and swollen. The Duke could tell that Luo Fei's mood was off. Before he could even ask, Luo Fei spoke first. "Am I a competent wife to you?" The Duke asked Luo Fei what on earth had happened. "Did someone mistreat you?" Luo Fei simply sobbed quietly to herself. The Duke was silent for a moment. Then, his eyes soft with tenderness, he said to Luo Fei, "Competent or not competent, what are you even talking about? To me, you are irreplaceable, a one-of-a-kind presence. There's no one else I want but you." Hearing this, Luo Fei broke into a tearful smile. "I'm sorry, saying all of this out of nowhere and making you worry. Please get some rest. Good night." And with that, Luo Fei skipped happily away. The Duke watched Luo Fei's departing figure. His heart was filled with questions about who was playing tricks behind the scenes. Whoever dared to hurt my wife, no matter who it is, must pay the price for it. Recently, there have been constant rumors saying that the relationship between the Duke and Luo Fei is very bad and that everything is just an act. They also said that the Duke was going to divorce Luo Fei because she couldn't have a baby. Luo Fei was also made depressed by these rumors. But in fact, the doctor had long told the Duke about Luo Fei's weak constitution and how difficult it would be for her to conceive. The Duke didn't take this matter to heart at all, because Luo Fei's bright smile was the best medicine in the world to heal him. After some investigation, the butler had already found the woman who spread the rumors. Looking at the Duke's cold eyes, the butler broke into a cold sweat. It seemed the Duke was truly angry this time. The next day, in a certain room in the Empire, an unknown Viscountess was woken up by her maid. It was because their family had actually received a letter from the Duke's household. The letter said for her to immediately stop spreading rumors about the Duchess, and that a small punishment had already been inflicted upon their family. Just then, the Viscount ran in a panic and told his wife that today all their business partners had announced they would stop doing business with their family. What on earth had happened? Hearing this, the Viscountess fainted on the spot. She never expected the consequences of gossiping to be so severe. The Duke asked Luo Fei to host a banquet because he had something important to announce. That evening, the nobles gathered in the reception hall of the Duke's estate. While the Duke hadn't arrived yet, a group of women surrounded the eldest prince and started chatting, leaving his girlfriend out in the cold. At this moment, the Duke walked to the balcony on the second floor. People raised their heads one after another to look at the Duke. The Duke didn't beat around the bush and spoke directly. "Recently, there have been constant rumors slandering my family. I have investigated this thoroughly and punished those who spread them. Here, I solemnly declare that I, Alphonse Belbork, have never thought of divorcing my wife. Furthermore, I deeply love my wife. In this life, and until death, my love will not change and will not be affected by any external factors. From now on, to protect my wife's honor from being violated, the Duke's household will spare no cost. I swear to God that there is not a single word of falsehood in what I said today." The Duke's words stunned all the nobles present, because in the Empire, it was highly detrimental to a family's prestige for a noble to publicly show affection. Moreover, it was the Duke who valued his pride more than anything else. The Duke slowly walked down the stairs and glanced at Luo Fei, who was looking completely bewildered. Back then, It was he who wrote in the marriage agreement that they couldn't fall in love with each other. Now that he had broken the agreement, would she look down on him? Looking at the Duke's back, Luo Fei called out to him, wanting to find a place to have a good talk. Luo Fei and the Duke sat in the study. Before Luo Fei could speak, the Duke asked first, "Are you angry?" Luo Fei was puzzled. "Why would I be angry?" The Duke continued, "Because not only did I break the marriage agreement and fall in love with you, but I also did that in front of so many people. You must feel very embarrassed." Luo Fei was instantly speechless. The marriage agreement also stated that they could only play cards once a month, yet he still broke the contract every day. And now he was saying this. But she didn't expect that this aloof Duke, who cared so much about his pride, would actually do such a thing for her in public. At this moment, the Duke suddenly pulled Luo Fei into a hug. Hidden in the Duke's warm embrace, Luo Fei felt the man's heartbeat. She had never dared to have any expectations of this man, but unexpectedly, he loved her too. It turned out that being loved was such a happy thing. Luo Fei looked into the Duke's eyes and told him, "Actually, I have always loved you too." The Duke instantly felt an electric shock. It turned out that this was the sentence he had always longed to hear. At this time, the screen gradually blurred. Time fast-forwarded to 2 hours later. These two people had actually just started playing cards right there. There was still a banquet going on outside. Luo Fei was a little excited when she heard the Duke was taking her to buy clothes. Is this man much more romantic than I imagined? But Luo Fei didn't expect to be brought into a lingerie shop by the Duke. Luo Fei was stunned, looking at the room full of lace trimmings. She quickly whispered to the Duke, asking if they had come to the wrong place. But the Duke had a serious expression. "That's right. Isn't this a clothing store too? Is there a problem?" Luo Fei's fantasy was instantly shattered. It turned out the clothes he wanted her to wear weren't evening gowns, but lingerie. Alphonse really was a man of few words, but ruthless actions. This big jerk. The staff came out to greet them. Although Luo Fei was very reluctant, since they were already inside, she might as well take a look. The clerk undressed Luo Fei until she was only in her underwear. Luo Fei secretly glanced at the Duke. She didn't expect that guy to be staring at her intently. Luo Fei instantly blushed all over. The clerk looked at Luo Fei's flushed body and asked, "Madam, are you too cold?" Luo Fei hurriedly waved her hands. No, I'm not cold." After her body measurements were taken, the clerk asked Luo Fei to choose a style. The Duke couldn't hold back anymore and asked, "Don't you have ready-made ones here? I don't want to look at pictures. I just want to see how they look when my wife puts them on herself." Luo Fei shyly entered the fitting room and started picking out lingerie. Hollowed out black lace. What's the difference between this see-through one and wearing nothing? This is absolutely a no-go. Finally, Luo Fei chose a relatively normal, girlish-style nightgown. The clerk showered Luo Fei with a basket full of praises and suggested she try another one. So, Luo Fei changed into another one, and the clerk flattered her again. Luo Fei shyly expressed her thanks. But Luo Fei still wanted to hear the Duke's thoughts, so she secretly peeked at him. But why was his expression so serious? Could it be that he didn't like it? Luo Fei suddenly felt very disappointed. She casually picked a few pieces and left the lingerie shop. Meanwhile, the Duke still had a serious look on his face, as if he was angry. Sitting in the carriage, Luo Fei was very confused. What was wrong with the Duke? However, when the Duke also got into the carriage, she understood everything. Because the Duke shouted at the coachman, "Quick, go to the nearest hotel." One early morning, a maid told Luo Fei that her parents were coming to visit. Luo Fei was very puzzled. "Since I'm married into the Duke's household, they haven't contacted me for these 2 years. Why are they coming all of a sudden?" Not long after, Luo Fei's parents arrived at the Duke's estate. Luo Fei and the Duke welcomed them together. Luo Fei was a little nervous. She was afraid that the two elders would see that she wasn't the real Luo Fei. And the Duke seemed very nervous as well, thinking about how to please his father-in-law and mother-in-law. In the evening, the Duke prepared a sumptuous dinner to welcome them. During the meal, the Duke's intimate gestures towards Luo Fei made the old couple feel it was unbelievable. "It seems His Grace loves my daughter very much." The Duke answered very sincerely, "My wife is very important to me, so I'm very grateful to my father-in-law and mother-in-law for allowing us to meet and marry." The old couple was completely stunned. Was this still the gloomy and ruthless-looking Duke from 2 years ago? Luo Fei's father smiled awkwardly and continued, "I am truly so happy that Luo Fei can receive your deep affection. She has been stupid and clumsy since childhood. I was always worried she would suffer grievances." At this moment, The Duke suddenly placed his wine glass heavily on the table and said seriously, "What do you mean by stupid and clumsy? You are being overly modest. I think it is completely unnecessary. I cherish and love my wife very much." In an instant, an extremely awkward atmosphere enveloped the entire dining table. After dinner, Luo Fei's mother said to her very directly, "Your father went into business to revive the family, but he failed every time. This time there's a new project, but it lacks funds. Take out some money to help your father. It would be even better if the Duke could also invest some." After hearing this, Luo Fei felt awful. No contact for 2 years, and now they suddenly came looking for her. Money. It was all for money. Luo Fei looked at the mother in front of her. In their eyes, there was only Luo Fei's younger brother. They always ignored Luo Fei's requests. The thing they said the most to Luo Fei was, "A woman just needs to marry well. A married daughter is like spilled water." Not only had Luo Fei always been ignored, but even when she got married, what they thought about wasn't Luo Fei's happiness, but how many benefits they could get from Luo Fei marrying into the Duke's household. Recalling all the past events, Luo Fei questioned her mother. "Meeting after 2 years, is this all you want to say to your daughter? Don't you think you should first ask about your daughter's recent situation to find out if she's been doing well during this time?" Hearing Luo Fei's unfriendly tone, her mother immediately changed her attitude and said to her, "How have you been? Is His Grace good to you?" Luo Fei dodged her mother's outstretched hand. "I'm doing very well. His Grace is also very good to me. I still have some things to attend to, so I won't keep you company, mother." The next day, Luo Fei was still in a very bad mood and decided to take a walk in the park. Unexpectedly, as soon as she went out, she ran into her father. Her father immediately started asking about her well-being, wearing the face of a loving father. But before he could even finish 3 sentences, this father placed his hand on Luo Fei's shoulder and said, "Recently, our family situation has been very difficult. We just heard that you've made quite a lot from doing business." Hearing this, Luo Fei finally understood the meaning of her parents' words last night. It turned out that because they lived too far away and were ill-informed, they came so late. If they hadn't known her business was doing well, would they never have come to visit her? At this time, this father slowly leaned closer to his daughter and spoke again. "Can't you lend a hand to help your own family?" At the same time, the hand on Luo Fei's shoulder gradually tightened threateningly. "We are your parents, and obeying us is your duty." Listening to her father's words, Luo Fei's tone gradually turned icy. "According to your teachings, a married daughter is an outsider." Then Luo Fei slapped away the hand on her shoulder and said toughly, "If it were in the past, I would definitely look at your faces and do as you bid. But it's different now. I am not Luo Fei Jaren, but Luo Fei Belbork." Seeing that Luo Fei actually dared to resist him, this father was exceptionally furious. "You wretched girl." He raised his hand, about to hit Luo Fei. Luo Fei was so scared she shut her eyes tightly, but she didn't feel any pain on her body. When she opened her eyes again, Luo Fei's father had already been grabbed by the collar by the Duke. The Duke, with a fierce look on his face, said, "I thought you were a good father to my wife. I didn't expect you to be something like a pest. On the first day you arrived here, you still put on the appearance of a loving father and mother. It turns out it was all an act. You don't love your daughter at all. Do you know who you were about to hit? She is the Duchess, the person I love the most." The old father-in-law trembled and begged for mercy. The old mother-in-law also joined in. In the end, the Duke still let them go, ordering the butler to throw their luggage and the two of them out of the Duke's estate together. The Duke caringly stroked Luo Fei's face. He knew how painful it was for children when their parents were unloving. But at least he still had Madame Mason by his side, while she didn't have a single person beside her who loved her. Thinking of this, the Duke gently hugged Luo Fei. He must love her well. Luo Fei was tossed about by the Duke all night. At this moment, her waist was so sore she couldn't walk. Do you know why the Duke worked so hard? The story starts with a notebook. Luo Fei found a notebook in the royal library. The notebook actually recorded a transmigrator who had a similar experience to hers. Moreover, the author of the notebook was in a city near the capital. Luo Fei was overjoyed. Although she really liked continuing to live here and also liked staying by the Duke's side, she still wanted to understand the secret about transmigration. After all, this body of hers wasn't her own. She always felt like she owed something. Only by figuring out the reason for transmigration and finding the real Luo Fei could she see if there was anything she could do to help her. Therefore, Luo Fei wrote a letter to this author, hoping to meet and chat. And this author also agreed to Luo Fei's request. At dinner, Luo Fei told the Duke that she wanted to open a branch store in another city, so she needed to go on a 10-day business trip for an inspection. The Duke strongly tried to stop her, but still couldn't overcome Luo Fei's determination. At the thought that the two wouldn't be able to see each other for 10 days, the Duke was exceptionally hardworking when playing cards at night. It just made Luo Fei suffer. She obviously still had to travel for a whole day, and her waist hurt so much. How could she bear it? However, thinking about it, yesterday's card playing was quite comfortable. The waist pain was worth it. Thinking of this, Luo Fei suddenly came back to her senses. How could she have such dirty thoughts? As the saying goes, he who stays near vermilion gets stained red, and he who stays near ink gets stained black. It must be that living with the Duke for too long, her thoughts had also been infected. Luo Fei and her servants took a carriage and arrived at the home of the notebook's author. The author began to introduce himself to Luo Fei. When he first transmigrated to this world, he was also completely bewildered. In order to find the truth behind the transmigration, he tried hard to find the answer. Finally, he found out that the answer was hidden inside the Holy Church. So through hard work, he made himself a priest of the Holy Church. After becoming a priest, he learned that in fact, there were many other transmigrators in this world. When people sleep, there's a very small chance that their souls will detach from their bodies and start wandering to other worlds. But basically, they will return to the body before the physical body wakes up. Only a very small portion of souls will get lost and enter the wrong body. Therefore, the chance of soul transmigration is very low. If one wants to transmigrate back, the chance is even lower. However, legend has it that the Holy Maiden within the Holy Church has the ability to allow transmigrators to contact their former bodies. But that is only a legend. Luo Fei was somewhat disappointed. She didn't want to contact her former body. She only wanted to contact the original owner of this body to see if she could help her with anything.